What if I told you that beneath the soaring arches of the Brooklyn Bridge, in the darkest days of the Great Depression, a ghostly fleet of hundreds of abandoned horse-drawn carriages gathered like silent sentinels, ready to ride at a moment's notice? Picture this: clattering wheels echoing off damp cobblestones, lanterns swinging in the chill air, and ragged drivers huddled around steaming pots of soup. These carriage riders weren't out for sightseeing. They were part of a secret relief network that distributed food, blankets, and hope to New York's forgotten souls. But here's the twist: the government seemed determined to look the other way. Why would City Hall turn a blind eye to a fleet of benevolent outlaws working under the cover of night? What hidden forces tried to keep their deeds shrouded in mystery? Over the next few minutes, we'll sift through clandestine letters, eyewitness accounts, and whispers passed down through generations to uncover how these horse-drawn heroes risked everything to feed the hungry, and why someone powerful wanted their story erased forever. Stick around, because tonight we're peeling back the tarp on one of the most heartwarming and most enigmatic chapters in New York history. Now let's rewind to the bitter winter of 1932, when New York's skyline looked more like a graveyard of half-finished skyscrapers than a beacon of progress. Flanked by the icy East River, the Brooklyn Bridge loomed overhead, its steel cables rattling in the wind. Newspaper boys hawked headlines like "Unemployment hits record high" and "Soup kitchen lines stretch 3 blocks." Families huddled in drafty tenements, trading hopes of better days for stale breadcrumbs. It was into this frostbitten landscape that our unlikely relief network was born. At the heart of our story were the horse-drawn carriage drivers, veterans of a bygone era who refused to give up their seats. Once chauffeurs for wealthy socialites, they'd been cast off like yesterday's fashions when the stock market crashed. Now, in battered coats and threadbare gloves, they reconvened under the bridge's dark arches. According to an old photograph discovered in a Brooklyn attic, dozens of carriages stood bumper to bumper, their wooden wheels coated in sludge, lanterns hanging low like tired sentinels. Rumor has it that the drivers called themselves the Wanderers, though no official record ever mentions them. Their leader was a grizzled ex-police inspector named Six-Foot Sal Moretti, who'd traded his badge for a coachman's whip. Locals whispered that he'd once chased bootleggers through moonlit streets. Now he chased a different kind of crime: hunger. In his satchel, he carried a stack of hand-scrawled letters from desperate mothers begging for a warm meal. One letter, penned in trembling script, read, "Dear Mr. Moretti, my Johnny is hungry and the hospital is full." Moretti never turned a letter away. He simply pinned it to a nearby beam and rode out into the night. Between the icy gusts, you could hear their jokes. At least the horses aren't complaining about minimum wage. And in one especially ironic moment, when a carriage wheel snapped in two, the driver quipped, "You call this a break? Try breaking into the Fortune 500. Those lighthearted jabs hit a deeper purpose: to keep morale high as they ferried sacks of potatoes donated by sympathetic grocers and loaves of bread from clandestine bakeries. By weaving these details together, the cracked pavement, the flickering lanterns, and the chorus of murmured prayers, you begin to see how a spontaneous community formed beneath those iron girders. It wasn't a formal organization. It was a ragtag alliance bound by necessity and compassion. Yet, despite their good deeds, the men felt eyes watching them. City officials, perhaps, who didn't want a reminder that government relief programs were slow to come. And so our secret relief network operated in plain sight, hidden by the very murk and mystery they navigated every night. Now we plunge into the heart of the mystery, where every creak of a wheel and flicker of a lantern brings us closer to the truth behind the wandering horse-drawn carriage organization. What follows are the clues that have puzzled historians, and as you'll see, nothing about this network was ordinary. Clue A: the burned oil lamp. One freezing February night, driver Tommy "Two-Bit" O'Leary vanished without a trace, leaving only a charred oil lamp at the mouth of a narrow alley beneath the bridge. Witnesses claimed the lamp's flame had guttered out moments before O'Leary disappeared, yet there was no sign of struggle. His carriage sat idle, horses restless but unharmed. To this day, folklore suggests that the lamp's flicker was an invitation, an unspoken signal that a larger force had taken him. Was it a rival relief ring out to sabotage them, or something far more unsettling? Clue B: the cryptic symbols. Weeks later, an amateur spelunker mapping the bridge's underbelly stumbled upon carved symbols on a bricked-over support pillar, ancient runes mixed with hastily scribbled numbers. No scholar has definitively decoded the markings, but some believe they represent ration quotas or secret rendezvous coordinates. One interpretation ties them to a Depression-era fraternal order rumored to traffic relief supplies under the guise of ceremonies. Others insist the numbers correspond to police patrol schedules, meaning someone was tracking the riders' every move. Whether a navigational aid or a warning, the symbols remain a tantalizing enigma. Clue C: the Midnight Carriage Convoy. On March 17, 1933, a group of 10 carriages assembled at precisely midnight. Locals say the horses stood perfectly still, breath steaming in the cold air, as if trained to obey an unseen conductor. Then, without a word, they moved in a silent procession toward a tenement block where city shelters had failed to meet demand. Neighbors peeked through frosted windows, bewildered to see uniformed drivers, some wearing police-style armbands, handing out steaming bowls of stew. No permit existed for this operation, yet no arrest was made. Rumor grew that certain officials quietly looked the other way, or perhaps secretly supplied resources. Clue D: the Tattered Ledger. In a dusty trunk discovered 3 decades later in Moretti's descendants' attic, a ledger detailed dozens of addresses, donation tallies, and cryptic notes like Red Door, Wednesday 2 a.m., or Blue Cart, Dry Dock Alley. The handwriting shifted between bold block letters and an elegant cursive, suggesting multiple contributors. Intriguingly, the final entry reads simply, "All gone, blessed be," dated April 1934. Did the network dissolve voluntarily, or was it dismantled by those who felt threatened? Historians debate whether this ledger represents closure or a warning that the story should never be told. Echoes in oral tradition. Grandmothers on the Lower East Side still recount tales of fleeting silhouettes, carriages appearing and vanishing faster than a lightning strike. One elderly woman swears that her father hid behind crates while a driver slipped him forged relief coupons that could be exchanged for food anywhere in the city. Another claims to have seen a coachman hand her mother the very letter we read earlier, urging discretion. These fragments of memory form a patchwork of oral evidence, each story offering a glimpse yet never the full picture. The inconsistencies only deepen the suspense. Why so much secrecy around a benevolent cause? Teasing humor among darkness. You'd think that organizing a clandestine charitable operation would involve state-of-the-art technology, like coded radio broadcasts or encrypted telegrams. Instead, these folks used oil lamps and whispered passwords that changed weekly. Pumpkin pie one night, silver horseshoe the next. It's almost laughable, yet these playful codes help them stay one step ahead of prying eyes. And when one driver attempted to rig up a makeshift megaphone from a gutter pipe, it blew apart in his hands, earning him the nickname Tin Can Tony for life. These human touches remind us that even in grim times, humor flickers. Fragmented transitions. Let's rewind to that fateful night when O'Leary vanished, then fast forward 2 months to the ledger's last scribble, and pause on the midnight convoy in between. Each segment raises new questions. Was the government complicit? Did an underground syndicate protect them? Or did something more supernatural lurk beneath the bridge's iron arches? As we piece together each fragment, the lines between fact and folklore blur, propelling us toward a deeper investigation. What do these clues point to? Taken together, these mysteries suggest an organization that operated with astonishing precision and remarkable solidarity. Yet someone powerful clearly wanted their story buried, leaving behind only whispers and charred lamps. So, what kept this network hidden for so long? Was it merely bureaucratic indifference, or were darker forces at work to ensure the hungry remained invisible? As you ponder these questions, brace yourself. The investigation has only just begun. Now that we've laid out the curious clues, the burned oil lamp, the cryptic runes, the silent midnight convoy, and the tattered ledger, let's don our detective hats and examine what these fragments really tell us. Is this simply a heartwarming tale of Depression-era do-gooders, or is there something more covert or even conspiratorial lurking beneath the Brooklyn Bridge? First, let's interrogate the archives. A deep dive into the New York Times microfilm archives reveals that on the night Tommy O'Leary vanished, police logs record an unauthorized carriage procession, yet the entry abruptly ends with "case closed, no further action." Meanwhile, internal letters from the Brooklyn Bureau of Public Charities mention unexplained nightly deliveries of food supplies, with one official grumbling, "Where are the records for these donations?" The discrepancy suggests more than bureaucratic bumbling. Someone at City Hall may have quietly redirected government relief funds into this unofficial network. Next up, expert testimony. We reached out to Dr. Eleanor Graves, a historian specializing in urban relief efforts. She notes that the runic symbols carved into the support pillars bear a striking resemblance to signage used by 19th century fraternal orders, groups that often pooled member dues to aid widows and orphans. Fraternal societies were masters of secrecy, she explains. They used coded language so that only insiders could follow instructions. If Moretti and his riders co-opted this system, it would explain the strange mashup of runes and ration counts, a tactical inheritance from earlier clandestine charities. Of course, no good analysis ignores the conspiracy angle. Local legend claims a secret syndicate of wealthy industrialists quietly funded the operation, motivated less by altruism than by a desire to suppress labor unrest. After all, if starving masses took up arms, profit margins could plummet. One dusty memorandum from a shipping magnate suggests a discreet loan of grain supplies to friends in the carriage trade, though the paper trail vanishes at the shore of the East River docks. Could the midnight convoy have been less about feeding humanity and more about keeping revolt quiet? But let's not dismiss the supernatural spin entirely. After all, horses standing motionless at midnight, lantern flames guttering on their own, these images sound lifted from a ghost story. Paranormal investigators in the 1970s swore they recorded low-frequency whistles beneath the bridge's arches at precisely 2:13 a.m., the same time O'Leary disappeared. Skeptics argue it was simply river wind around the steel cables, but the timing is uncanny. Was the bridge itself haunted by the sorrow of the abandoned? Or did someone stage eerie sounds to intimidate curious onlookers? Turning back to folklore, local elders recount how Moretti once staged a mock funeral for a fallen carriage horse, complete with black drapes and somber bugle calls, to draw attention to the plight of displaced workers. One elderly witness chuckles. He even tipped his hat to City Hall's men in the audience. This theatrical flair suggests that, even in secrecy, the riders knew how to craft a narrative. Their humor and showmanship remind us they weren't mere shadows, they were street performers of compassion, using drama to highlight injustice. Finally, let's synthesize these threads. The archival inconsistencies hint at tacit official support. The fraternal runic link points to an inherited code of charity. The industrialist memorandum teases a hidden political motive, and the whispered paranormal phenomena underscore the group's mythic status. At the center of it all stands Sal Moretti, a man who navigated between bureaucrats, laborers, and possibly even high society backers. So, what's the most plausible explanation? The evidence suggests a hybrid model, a grassroots relief network that leveraged secret society methods, funded in part by sympathetic elites, and dramatized through folklore to protect its operations. Yet the door remains ajar for further questions. Who dictated the weekly passwords? Were any riders covertly paid off to remain silent? And could other, as yet undiscovered documents rewrite our understanding entirely? There's no neat verdict here, only a tapestry of hints, half-truths, and tantalizing gaps. As we move toward our conclusion, keep in mind that in history, as in mystery, the most compelling stories are those that refuse to be fully explained. After deciphering the charred oil lamps, mysterious runes, midnight processions, and faded ledgers, a picture of desperate sympathy armed with secrecy emerges. Under the Brooklyn Bridge, Sal Moretti and his ragtag band combined fraternal code words, secret donations, and a flair for the dramatic to feed the hungry, and always stayed one step ahead of bureaucrats and rumor mongers. Their network thrived in the shadows, sustained by secret codes and the goodwill of unexpected patrons. But like any good mystery, crucial clues were lost over time. Who financed those sacks of potatoes? Why did city officials turn a blind eye, then erase all records? Were those late-night rattles on the tracks just the wind, or a deliberate reminder to stay away? History may never give us definitive proof. But one thing is certain: the story of the wandering wagons still reverberates between the steel arches, begging for thought. If you have a story about a secret family hero or a theory about the motives of the agents under the bridge, leave it in the comments below. Your insights could be the missing clue. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold history, like it if you enjoy stories of bravery and altruism, and share this video with friends who crave unofficial stories. Next week, we'll visit Florida's haunted restaurant. Come ring the bell and join us as we continue to uncover the secrets of a forgotten past.